Hobbes, mortal god. What is the state for Hobbes? He famously named the state Leviathan in the book of that name and mortal god. The state is an artificial animal, a technology which exists to reduce the wills of the many people living under it to one will, i.e. to conform to a unified will. It will govern through reward and punishment. The key factor is that the state possesses absolutely overawing power so that it can impose stability and order over a population occupying a given territory. Why would we voluntarily create a technology to overawe ourselves and force us into conformity and obedience? Here Hobbes proposes his state of nature theory, whereby people are portrayed as necessarily hostile and uncooperative toward one another, and hence in a perpetual state of war, of every man against every man. Why war? Because Hobbes asserts that by nature we are all selfish and acquisitive, and we can have no shared moral vision to regulate our conduct toward one another. But whatsoever is the object of any man's appetite or desire, that is it which he for his part calleth good, and the object of his hate and aversion evil. As the Romans said, man is a wolf to man. In such a condition, life is, quote, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Most emphatically, there is no natural or organic basis to society. Hobbes' self-conscious modernism lies in his rejection of all pre-modern conceptions of society as a natural organism, especially the Aristotelian view. To escape this condition is the motivation for creating the mortal god whom we will serve and who will bestow upon us, or else withhold, whatever riches and graces it decides. Ironically, Hobbes admits that this condition never really existed to a broad extent, but it could happen someplace. Never mind that all actually existing traditional communities operated cooperatively and shared a moral vision. Of course, it has become almost a commonplace to point out that the isolated, atomized individual presupposed in early modern theory, the liberal theory of Locke, just as much as the authoritarian theory of Hobbes, never actually existed prior to the modern state, but that the modern state more and more produces denatured, alienated individuals with no substantive identities besides being producers and consumers. However that may be, Hobbes goes on to state that sovereignty is the artificial soul of this artificial god, its life force. Here we get to our point. What does this sovereignty entail? What are the necessary powers a state must possess to be a state? Hobbes is quite detailed and specific in enumerating 12 powers expressed as rights a state must exercise to maintain itself in its godlike, unassailable, supreme status. Number 1, the right to not be disposed. A state must perpetuate its existence regardless of right and wrong. Hobbes recognises no right and wrong beyond what the state defines as legal and illegal. Who heads the state may revolve through elections or whatever, but the state must endure. Number 2, the right of exemption from the social contract. The state is ultimately unaccountable to its subjects. Otherwise, the subjects would be more powerful than the state. Number 3, dissenters to the social contract are compelled to come in. The right of all-inclusiveness. No one and nothing can be thought to lie outside the state's authority. Number 4, the right of immunity. No one may claim the state has harmed them because they retain no rights beyond those granted by the state. Number 5, the right of impunity. No one can rightly put the sovereign to death. Number 6, the right to determine which opinions are conducive to peace, explicitly granting the right to censorship and the interpretation of Scripture. The state must have authority over thought and opinion because these lead to action which could lead to challenging the state. Number 7, the right to promulgate laws. Number 8, the right of judicature, to decide cases based on the law. Number 9, the right to make war and peace. See Schmidt's friend-enemy dichotomy. Number 10, the right to appoint magistrates, officers and councillors. Note that these are ultimately officials of the state, not representatives of the people. Number 11, the right to reward and punish according to the law. Number 12, the right to give titles and honours, to establish social ranks. It is essential to notice the absolutely non-arbitrary nature of the rights Hobbes reserves to the sovereign. Each one is an essential link in the chain of the supremacy of the state. To compromise any of them would be to open up a weakness in the state by which some other authority could make a counterclaim to power. A state may choose to exercise these rights in nice ways if that is deemed politically expedient. What Hobbes is showing us is the nature of the state. They may not always be explicit about their powers. They may choose to walk softly while carrying their big sticks. Yet as long as the state remains a state, it implicitly or explicitly relies on asserting these rights.